Welcome back to the Extra Point.
Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new year of the Extra Point. And we're going to start off a little bit by talking about a sport that kind of happened when we weren't in school, while we were, out on our good old summer break. I'm Adam. Alongside me, I got Nat and Collin. And we're going to talk about one of probably the biggest sporting events, not just in the United States, but in the globe, that happens every 4 years. And that is the good old 2024 Summer Olympics that took place this past summer in Paris, France. So first thing I want to ask Nat and Collin, I want to ask you both, what were kind of your initial thoughts overall on past year's Olympics?
Well, I was really excited to see this year's Olympics after 2020, after everything that happened with COVID and how everything kind of just got tumbled around, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding the 2020 Olympics, especially with the treatment and the conditions that the athletes were living in. These are supposed to be the world's greatest athletes, and they were sleeping on cardboard beds. And yes, it was for an environmental purpose, but still, these people are supposed to be competing with their bodies, and their bodies were not being treated well during that time. And I was excited to see the differences that would occur 4 years later.
One thing that stood out to me was France really stepped up their A game. They really did pull through for their Olympic Games. Them cleaning the river was pretty nice. I'm glad to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very nice to see that they were able to, kind of let those athletes compete. And, it really was a concern for a while that we weren't sure if we were able, to be able to see, long distance swimming that they were supposed to do in the Seine River through Paris. My kind of initial reaction was I thought they did a really nice job, Paris and the country of France as well. But I feel like the real thing is it came up so quickly because you're used to having it, I feel like, every 4 years. Mm-hmm. And obviously with it being postponed in 2020, it felt weird kind of having it being really only 3 years apart instead of 4, being in 2021. So the first thing I thought of is when it kind of just happened, I'm like, oh, it's already here. And kind of that was my initial reaction to it. But obviously, as I got along, you just were like, it was kind of there. And then obviously we'll go back again to 4 years with LA in 2028. Another thing that I like about the Olympics is there's so many great stories and it brings so many people together. Obviously, there's so many great American stories, obviously the ones that come first to mind to many people, being Simone Biles, Katie Ledecky, a lot of the big names as well. But it's awesome to hear, many great stories about different athletes as well. So I want to hear maybe a story or two real quick from you guys that kind of stood out and means something to you.
So for me, one of my favorite stories from this Olympics was the U.S. men's gymnastics team, who they finally got their first medal in well over a decade, and you can really just give all the credit for that to Steven Nordisek, I think is how you say his last name. He he got a bronze medal on the pommel horse, which led the team to getting their first medal in a while. Steven is a Penn State gymnast, and he actually has an eye condition, which we saw a video of him preparing for his competition on the pommel horse before with his eyes closed, kind of leaning back. Everybody thought he was relaxing a little bit, but it was actually because his eyes were he was in a great amount of pain because of how bright the lights were. And for him to go out and give that type of performance afterwards is just really heartwarming, and it's really a great message for anybody with any type of disability that they can go the yard and they can do that too. Collin?
Speaking of heartwarming, there was this story of a Korean and South Korean athlete hugging it out, and that was on the news that day. And it was really heartwarming to see two countries that are notoriously sworn enemies really put their differences aside for the Olympic Games.
Those are stories that, I'll tell you, Collin, those are stories I love to hear because, what the Olympics do, and there's probably two sports that I say do this for around the globe, and two big sporting events. Obviously, the Olympics is one, and to me, the other is the World Cup. They bring everybody together. Everybody that's there has a common interest. They are passionate. They love competing in their respective sport. And you know what they're doing mostly in number one? Is competing for their country. And that's really what the Olympics is all about. So I got kind of two stories I liked and that really kind of stood out to me. The first one was there was a new sport that was added this past year to the Olympics, and that was surfing. It made its debut. But when you think of Paris, there's not really any ocean near there. And what was awesome to me was they held it in Tahiti, which is owned by France. And it was just something cool because it was a lot different than kind of where everybody else was. I mean, most of the coaches and the athletes, they were living on cruise ships. I mean, if I could get to go to the Olympics and, you know, live on a cruise ship while I'm doing it, hey, I'm living a good life and I'm not complaining. And the other story I want to talk about, not necessarily an American story, but with a French swimmer, Léon Marchand, who was a 22-year-old French swimmer. He was in his first Olympics, was an NCAA champ this past year at Arizona State. And in the same night, he set 2 Olympic records while winning 2 gold medals in the 200-meter butterfly and the 200-meter IM, which were swum 90 minutes apart. The only other man to do that was Michael Phelps. So we also ended up winning 4 golds in the 200 fly, 200 breast, 200 IM, 400 IM. And could we maybe see him kind of emerge as an elite male swimmer in 2028? Any final thoughts real quick on the Olympics as we have a couple extra seconds here?
I think the U.S. really showed up this round, and they brought home the most amount of medals of any other country, and that's just a great champion for us as a country.
Okay.
Well, for me, one thing, don't bring back breakdancing. Just don't bring back breakdancing.
Collin, I'd love to get more into the breakdancing story, but unfortunately we have run out of time here on this segment of The Extra Point. Stay tuned for more.
In the wise words of Deion Sanders, we are talking showtime, prime time television. We got 3 primetime games coming up, second week of the season. We're going to talk about it here on Extra Points. I'm your host today, Dean, joined with Benicio and John. Today, we're going to get right into things. We got 3 primetime games, one of which is happening right now. And my goodness, is it not a good start for my Miami Dolphins as they are playing the Buffalo Bills. Tua has just thrown a pick on the opening drive, and it hurts me to my very core. But what do we think is going to happen the rest of this game?
I think the Dolphins are going to win this game. I'm big on their secondary. I think that Jalen Ramsey and Jordan Poyer are going to give those Bills receivers a hard time. Josh Allen will eventually throw a pick. And I think that was just one bad throw by Tua. I don't see how the Bills are stopping Tyreek and Jalen Waddle for the rest of the game.
I agree. I mean, you look at the Miami Dolphins, their offense is high power. I mean, you talk about Waddle and Tyreek, 2 great receivers, Raheem Mostert, and that running back room is just really good. And they're not going to slow them down forever, but a lot of times when you're getting into games, sometimes there could be that little adjustment period. So I think it will be a closer game as the game goes on.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be a close game, but right now it's not very close as the Bills just marched down the field and scored a touchdown, so it is now 7-0 Buffalo. I'm really trying my hardest to keep my cool, and guys, I tell you, the Miami Dolphins cannot beat the Buffalo Bills. I don't know what it is about Buffalo. They're just allergic to the Bills. They cannot beat the Bills. The Buffalo Bills are, I believe, 11-1 since 2018 against the Miami Dolphins. As a Dolphin fan, I have done nothing but see the Bills absolutely own the Dolphins, and it sickens me to my very core, but that's just how things have been. Unfortunately, I really want to be optimistic, but the way this game is turning out, I'm going to go for a Buffalo victory on this one. It's just the way of the road. Miami can't beat them. I don't know what McDermott has on this Mike McDaniel offense. They really run that good press man coverage, taking away the #1 read. And Tua has a really hard time. Tua has never had a great game against Buffalo, and he's already struggling in this one. McDermott has their number, and it hurts, but that's just how it has been. That being said, we have 2 other primetime games that very interesting this week. We have Texans-Bears. Got Caleb Williams going up against C.J. Stroud. What do we think about this one?
Well, I think down the road this would be just an all-time classic when Caleb Williams is in his prime. But I think he's still yet to find his groove. He struggled in that first game, and now he's going up against a dominant pass rush and a dominant secondary. So he's going to continue having his growing pains, whereas C.J. Stroud is just going to dominate with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stephon Diggs' targets, and that Bears defense will not be able to contain him. So I say Texans win by about 2 scores.
I agree. I think Texans win, but I think it will be a little bit of a closer game. I think as you saw, even when they were getting blown out by Tennessee, that defense is legit. That's an elite defense no matter what way you want to put it. And Caleb Williams is going to get together. He did do nothing the first game, and no rookie quarterback, very few rookie quarterbacks come in and light it up right away. So I definitely think hopefully he's going to settle in now. He's got a great receiving room, and hopefully we see a better Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think this is going to be a Texans win, but, you know, Caleb really only had about, I believe it was under 100 passing yards in that first game. It's a tough game, and they're playing against a good defense, a team that went on a big run last year. They went 10-7, made it all the way to the divisional round. This is going to be a very good Texans team. They played against the Colts, I believe, last week. Anthony Richardson gashed that defense for the most part, and I mean, he made a couple of errant throws, but I definitely think Caleb is going to continue to flash those talents. I mean, I think we can all agree that he's probably one of the most talented quarterback prospects that we've seen in years. I mean, that guy is truly, truly an incredible player. But with that being said, we have one more game, and I have an interesting take that I want to present to you guys. We got Falcons, Eagles, Monday Night Football. Now listen, everyone knows Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. He's 3-10. He struggles. 12-20 on prime time in his career. Everyone knows how bad Kirk Cousins has been on prime time, which is why I'm going to pick Kirk Cousins to win this game. He's going to lead the Falcons in an upset against the Eagles. I can't explain it. I'm just feeling it. I think Kyle Pitts is a big mismatch on anyone really in that Eagles secondary. I can't really see anyone guarding him. They're starting to get him more involved with the ball. What do you guys think?
I think it'll be a blowout for the Eagles. We know how bad Kirk Cousins is in primetime. We saw him struggle with a similar Eagles defense 2 years ago. He's never really good against great defenses in general. And on top of that, that run defense in Atlanta is just bad. So I see Saquon running for 200 yards and just having
200.
Yeah,
that's a big
that's
number.
my take for the weekend. I think Saquon's going to continue to make his case for Offensive Player of the Year and just run over that Atlanta defense. So I'm going with the Eagles.
I agree. I think the Eagles too. I do think Atlanta is suspect on defense, but I got to be honest with you. Kind of like we were talking about Caleb, it comes down to also Kirk Cousins, what he looks like after this injury. I mean, it was a big injury, and if he can't go back to even a little bit of old Kirk Cousins, Falcons is in for a really bad season.
No, they definitely are. They could be in time for a rough season. I mean, they did draft Michael Penix, so worst comes to worst, they could give Penix some starts as well. But I think in due time, Kirk Cousins will catch up. If you guys remember, Kirk Cousins was arguably an MVP candidate last year. He was excellent before that torn ACL. And with the amount of weapons that he has in Atlanta, and not to mention, I think that defense could make a little bit of noise. I think like they got guys like Justin Simmons that a lot of people tend to forget about that they signed in the offseason. They still got Grady Jarrett. They still have
Jesse Bates,
who was almost an all-pro last year. A.J. Terrell, one of the more underrated cornerbacks in football. I think you got to give it time for the Falcons. I'm picking them to win just because, hey, you know what? I feel like Kirk Cousins has kind of the monkey's paw on his back. Like he has a lot of things to prove on this Monday night. And you know what? He played a really tough, stingy Steelers defense. It is a little off topic, but I feel like the Steelers just make every game so unenjoyable to watch. They're one of those boring teams that I have ever watched.
Well, they're all defense and no offense.
They're all defense, no offense. Boswell had like 6 field goals in that game. Like that team is just.
Well, that's what happens when you have Justin Fields as your quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah, Justin Fields, and then I mean Russell Wilson as well. Didn't even suit. I think he suited up last week, but he wasn't ready
hurt,
to play.
Yeah.
He's injured right now, but he'll be getting some start in due time. But just to recap, real quick, we're going to go through our picks one more time. Unfortunately, I am picking Buffalo to win this one.
I'm going with the Dolphins in an upset.
I'll go Bills, Texans, and Eagles.
Those Texans, Eagles. I'm going to go with the Texans as well, and I am going to pick the Falcons in an upset. And Benicio, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I'm going with the Houston Texans and the Philadelphia Eagles.
So you guys heard it here first. Those were our picks for the primetime games. Hopefully I am wrong, and hopefully the Dolphins can pull off an upset. They are marching down the field right now. I'm going to cross my fingers. But with that being said, we are going to wrap up this segment here. I am Dean Heidel, and we will see you in the next segment.
Back.
It's September. It's a big month for baseball. We are about 2-3 weeks away from the regular season coming to a close, and we've got some tight playoff races in both the American and the National League. I am joined by Dean, Nolan, Benicio, Abby, and Nat, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what's on the line here because there's still a lot of baseball to be played. So starting off in the American League, top seed currently, my New York Yankees. Juan Soto. Yeah. 84-62, you know. We started, what, like 50-22? It's been a rough second half, but still good enough to maintain the 1 seed. And hopefully, you know, we get the home field advantage because I think we're going to need it badly.
Fingers crossed.
It's a big win. Currently 1-1, one apiece. Gleyber Torres, I believe, hit a home run. Danny Jansen, for who some reason
Who owns us.
looks like Johnny Bench
Absolutely
against the
owns us,
Yankees,
yeah.
but against everyone else, he's just regular old Danny Jansen. Tua threw another pick, by the way.
Second seed. Very surprising. Like, come on.
Yeah,
Who would have thought the Cleveland Guardians would be in this position?
I'm not surprised they're in the playoffs. A little bit surprised they're at the 2. But I'm not surprised that they're in the playoffs.
I
They're
mean,
a young team.
2022, they were
That's a
good.
point.
For a while.
That's a good point. It's a young core, you know. They've been rebuilding for a while, pretty much. And at this point, you kind of expected them to at least, you know, be well in the standings. So I think it just kind of surprised me because I haven't seen them do this well and like consistently in a really long time.
Yeah.
So it just took me off guard.
They lost that World Series in 2016 to the Cubs in heartbreaking fashion. They were never the same since. And then
Wait, I thought that was the Indians.
yeah, they were
Okay.
a little bit.
All right.
And then these guys are inevitable. Like, they started the season like 20 games below 500, but here they are, top of the AL West.
I want to
And-
like talk about the trash cans for a second because I think they're using them again after the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
they just come out of nowhere every year, and
Yeah,
I don't know.
it-
I don't know when it's going to be
okay.
stopped, but you know, it's
Well, it was stopped last year by the Texas Rangers.
they
so
were stopped last
They
year by the
were.
They
Texas Rangers.
aren't
Yeah.
the reigning
That Rangers team
champions.
last year, came out of nowhere, and the Diamondbacks too. Oh my God.
We'll get to the Diamondbacks
Yeah.
later.
Baltimore, those pesky Orioles, man, they just don't go away.
Honestly, I've been surprised with them too.
Yeah.
Because I feel like for the past couple seasons, it's been like you get either side with them. You either get a really good, strong team or, trash. And especially with a lot more young players coming in now, especially from their farm system, I think it's looking up for them. I don't think they're going to go too far in the playoffs, but, it's cool to see them up
Yeah,
there
they've
again.
been building up that farm system for years, and now all the young players are finally blossoming, and they're showing it. It's going to be tough. The Yankees and New Orleans, they play each other in late September, and that could all the well decide the AL East.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a masterful rebuild by G and Mike Elias. They had some of the worst seasons you'll ever see, and now they got a superstar shortstop in Gunnar Henderson, best catcher in the world in Adley Rutschman, and they got good pitching too with guys like Corbin Burns and Zach Eflin, who has been on fire since joining the Orioles. So Orioles definitely a team I wouldn't want to go through in the playoffs. I'm so glad they're in the American League and my Mets won't have to play them.
Yeah, that's
If
why
the Mets
it
get
is-
there.
Yeah, it's so
We are
important.
getting there.
That's why it's so important. These next coming games coming up, the Yankees play a series at home against the Orioles. That is must win for the Yanks if they want to take that division. That half a game lead essentially means nothing. I'm not moved. Once I see
Yeah.
the number three-game lead on the Orioles, I'll be a little bit more like, okay, I could breathe a little bit, but a half a game is practically nothing to me. So if the Yankees want any shot of winning that division, you have to beat the Orioles. You have to start sweeping the awful teams. I'm sorry. Splitting a series with the White Sox or taking 2 of 3 is unacceptable.
That was
You got to
tough
sweep.
watch.
Unacceptable.
Especially
That
when they
one
like
loss was
14,
really
like
bad,
12
too.
or
Yeah,
something
that-
like that.
that was horrible.
Like it's double
I think it was like
digits.
14-2.
Yeah.
Yep.
That
was really bad.
kind of embarrassing.
And that's been the problem. That's a consistent problem for the Yankees this season. You see these higher scoring games so often, and it's really becoming concerning as a Yankee fan because they're over the past few seasons it's been really close with most of the games. So it's a little bit concerning because you don't want things to start to slip away, especially in September. It gets a little hairy, so it's just something to look out for.
Especially with the Yankees' current closing situation where we just don't have a
Don't even get
closer.
me started. I can talk about
And
this all
We'll
day.
move on quick, but especially we haven't had a real closer in.
Yeah.
and
he wasn't even a
well,
real closer.
Chapman was
He
great.
He was-
Chapman was great for a few years.
Yeah.
until
And
he
then
now he's on the
sticky
Royals.
stuff, and then yeah.
So moving on to the Royals, I guess. 'Cause
The Royals, 100 losses last year.
I think that's
And now
gotta
look at
be
'em. Are you kidding me?
I think that's got to be surprise team of the
They
year.
were my biggest surprise of the season. I had no idea
Undoubtedly.
they'd be this good. I thought they'd be getting a top 10 pick, but right now they're one of the best teams in the world. They've got the best player in the world, not named Aaron Judge, in Bobby Witt Jr.
Shohei Ohtani,
Or-
Benicio.
I'd take Bobby Witt over
Oh,
Shohei
okay.
Ohtani.
Ooh.
He's playing the
That is
field.
crazy.
Save that for hot
That's
take
a
radio.
spicy
Save that
take.
for hot take radio.
We
I
could have a
will.
whole segment on that.
Minnesota
alone.
Twins. They've been here.
They're back and forth.
They won a
Yeah.
playoff series
It's
last
tough.
year. That was cool.
Yeah. And
More than the
they've
Yankees.
kind of been falling apart, though. You got the Tigers, Red Sox, and Red Sox aren't going to make it. These two, though, Tigers have been on a roll. So,
Mariners play a big 4-game series. We were just talking about that ahead of time. The Mariners play a big 4-game series against the Astros.
I don't
mean,
think
4
they're gonna,
games
I don't
out.
think they're going to do anything. Just the way that they've been playing lately.
Yeah, and that-
Their
So
offense
how
has
they
been
got
offense
up
been
by, like,
historically
so
bad.
many games
Abysmal.
on the Astros, and now they're 4 games back in the wild card. Not on, or yeah, I guess on the Astros too. Like they're like 4 games back,
Yeah.
which is like based on where they were before, that's pretty bad.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the offenses went ice cold. And I mean, listen, if they have even had somewhat of a pulse on offense, they would be probably one of the scariest teams to face in the entire league with how good their pitching is. I mean, Luis Castillo's having a good year. I mean, they have such a deep bullpen as well. I just can't believe how tough that offense has been all season.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the Tigers for a second. I think that assumed that they could be in a very similar position as the Guardians. They've been rebuilding for a long time, and they've been collapsing, rebuilding for a long time. But I do think that eventually they can get into. I don't think they're going to make it this year, but in the next 5 years, probably they think they will finally make that playoff push that they've been searching for so long, and the city of Detroit has been searching for so long across all sports.
That would
Yeah.
be great. The Detroit resurgence has been very pleasing.
Yeah, so American League, now got the National League.
I feel like the National League is a little more cut and dry. I feel like the Phillies, Dodgers, Brewers are all
The
pretty much
Dodgers
locked
feature
in.
the MVP of the league, of the National League this year in Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I know he's a little bit upset, but
Excuse me.
Oh boy.
That might be a little questionable.
It's
That
not.
is-
It's
it is
not.
the
It's
biggest
not even a
pet peeve.
question.
MVP has changed so much over the year. MVP does not mean most valuable player
Okay.
anymore. MVP
Go tell that to the
means
voters
both-
then. Go talk
Sorry,
to the voters.
do you wanna ask
MVP
the
means
MLB
best
that?
players
Yeah.
now. MVP.
Do you want to ask the MLB what MVP
Yeah.
stands for?
It means most valuable player.
Yeah.
And,
So wait.
and the Dodgers
okay, hang
would
on.
be, the Dodgers would be exactly where they are
I'm
without
sorry for bringing
Shohei
this up,
Ohtani.
guys.
Would the Mets be where they are without Francisco Lindor? Absolutely not.
we're getting a little bit sidetracked.
Anyways.
MVP means Aaron Judge.
Exactly.
Anyways,
We're talking about the NL, buddy.
yeah, and I didn't stutter. He would be the NL. He would be the. He should just be the MVP of baseball. That is how
Yeah.
good he is. That's it. Anyways, because there really, in my opinion,
Okay, continue.
there really even isn't a good
Continue,
National League MVP this
continue.
year. But that's on me.
Continue.
Anyways, the Diamondbacks, after a very slow start, they kind of crawled their way back into things. Corbin Carroll had a really rough start, but he's been back. The Padres still making some noise without Soto. Still got guys like Machado. Profar, I think he's one of the crazy surprise players of the year as well.
Come on.
Kind of was a top prospect for a while, never really panned out, and now he's playing pretty well. Got Nolan's Mets in there. That's going to be a big series against the Braves, kind of similar to the Yankees.
Probably on
That's
national
must
TV.
win.
Was it a 3-game set or 4-game set?
Yeah.
think-
Remember what
I think
happened
it's
the last
three.
time
National
that the
TV, all
Mets
3
had to
games.
play the Braves in a must-win series?
Oh my God!
And they got swept. And DeGrom got
And then they
shelled.
lost to the
but we don't
Padres.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that was, and
That was
Jordan
a lot
Love
of
with his
fun
ear,
to
remember
watch,
that?
Yeah, we're in the
personally.
of that year,
October
I know.
Rise, that
Yeah.
lasted 3 games.
That was tough to watch.
As a Mets fan, maybe a hot take. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
They're definitely not.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
you're just
wait.
saying
Also,
that to
hang
make
on.
me upset.
Grimace is no longer on your side. I know your City Connects are purple now, but like,
I'm just saying I'm actually the reason that the Mets are now doing well. I put a bag on my head, and after that,
He was on SportsCenter.
I made it on
give it to
SportsCenter
him.
congrats.
because I put a bag on my head, and after that they started the win streak. Not Grimace. Just
Give it a
saying.
month. The Mets won't be on SportsCenter.
Look,
And
I mean, we also got the Cardinals and the Cubs,
Yeah,
but let's
but
be real. I feel like they're
let's
just
be
kind of
real.
there.
I think they're cooked.
I
at
think
this
they're
point.
yeah, they're kind of
I
cooked at
agree,
this point.
so.
Disappointing season for the Cubs. I really expected more out of
I
them.
feel like the National League in general, there's not as much noise compared to the American
I
League.
disagree. I think
You're a
there's
Mets fan,
a
there's a
lot of great
difference.
teams: Phillies, Dodgers, and Brewers.
Oh, I do agree. The
Great
top three up
rosters.
there.
Diamondbacks, Padres, and Mets.
Diamondbacks
They
are
also have great
deadly.
rosters. I think it's just with the National League. If you look at the wild card teams, they started off the season really poorly. They were terrible
Yeah.
in the first half, and all three teams have just been surging since the All-Star break. So I think that gives us the illusion that they might not be as good as they are. But if you look at the teams they've been in the second half, the Diamondbacks, Padres, and Mets are all some of the best teams in baseball.
Yes, that is definitely true, but it's going to be a big 2 weeks for baseball, and we'll see how it goes. October is coming, so yeah, we'll see you guys then.
Go Dolphins.